Alam ng puso, sa dibdib ko'y buhay. Hindi sumusuko sa hirap matlumbay. Sa mga manlulupi, hindi pasisil. Duyan ang magigiti, hindi papi. Kabuti ay batid, 500 taon ng daluyot yanig. Tayo bumabangon, isang puso pa rin, isang alab sa dilim. Iba't iba sa putik matapos ang bagyo. Lahat magkakapit-bisig, patuloy na sumusulong. Isang puso pa rin, isang alam sa iba't iba man ang mga bituin. Sa isang kalawakan magniningning, magkahawak kamay sa lilim na bugaw na langit. Ang magpabiling, dili magpapildi, dungganing awiton, dili mapahilom. Umaga pabiling, dili magpapildi, dungganing awiton, dili mapahilom. Umaga pabiling, dili magpapildi, dungganing awiton, dili mapahilom. Umaga pabiling, dili magpapildi, dungganing awiton, dili mapahilom. Isang puso pa rin, isang alam sa dilim. Iba't iba man ang mga bituin. Sa isang kalawakan nagniningning, magkahawak kamay sa lilim ng bugaw na langit.
pa rin ang nagwagi. Mula sa kanluran kung saan lulubog ang araw, huhubog ng umagang sa silangan matatanaw. Kahit saan ang hangganan, tatak ng Pilipino laging nandyan. Sa kahapon at kinabukasan, anumang bahagi ng kasaysayan, tatak ng PINOY, Pilipino ay nandyan. Alay ng pusong magiliw, salubungin kang nakangiti. Ang kahit na sinong lumapit, kayo'y aming mga kapatid. Mula sa hilaga hanggang timog ay umuki ng pag-asang liliwanag ang inang sa gitna ng dilim. Kahit saan ang hangganan, tatak ng Pilipino laging nandyan. Sa kahapon at kinabukasan, anumang bahagi ng kasaysayan, tatak ng PINOY, Pilipino ay ibunyag, ipagsigawan, ipagdiwang tayo'y umabit na. Kahit saan mang hangganan, tatak ng Pilipino laging nandyan. Sa kahapon at kinabukasan, anumang bahagi ng kasaysayan, tatak ng PINOY, Pilipino ay nandyan.
This 2021, the Filipino people will commemorate the 500th anniversary of the victory of Lapu-lapu and his men in the Battle of Mactan.
Like the founders of the Filipino nation, we, the Filipinos of today, acknowledge its symbolism as the light that illuminates our path to be free, sovereign, and victorious always.
Lapu-lapu and Mactan are our common heritage as a Filipino.
Let the spirit of valor transcend in our times as we face new challenges.
Rising sea temperatures, more extreme weather conditions, and global health pandemics.
Together with the rest of the world, our time requires us Filipinos to stand up and take our part in protecting our home planet.
We are 100 days away from the Quincentennial of the Victory of Mactan.
And to mark this milestone in Philippine history, the government and a Letter of Light Foundation
We're creating a large-scale solar installation of the Quincentennial Logo.
This is the fourth of its kind in the last 8 weeks, beginning with the Philippine flag, the profile of Rizal, and the world's largest rosary.
The fifth one will be at the ground zero of the Quincentennial D-Day at Mactan, Lapu-lapu City.
all of this are built by thousands of Filipinos through Light It Forward Challenge, which is an online campaign to encourage ordinary citizens to help a liter of light tackle energy poverty by building simple solar light from the safety of home.
These lights will be distributed afterwards to various communities.
Let us celebrate the 500 years and be inspired by the lessons of the past.
And ingrained in our hearts and minds that we can be heroes and defenders of our planet.
In our own light.
Pagani ang ating lahi.
Mandirigmang Pilipino.
Dakila ang lahi ko.
Bayaning Filipino.
Sa makabagong panahon.
Mandirigmang Pilipino, dakila ang lahi ko. Bayaning Pilipino, sa makabagong panahon.
Isang mapagpalat mga saysayang 2021 sa ating lahat. I'm Ayesha Sayseng, Historic Sites Development Officer from the National Historical Commission of the Philippines and a member of the National Quincentennial Committee Secretariat. Muling nagbabalik ang countdown to 500 online lectures, a special program brought to you by the Office of the President of the Philippines and the National Quincentennial Committee in anticipation of the 2021 Quincentennial Commemorations in the Philippines. This is a series of online lectures which aims to sustain the Filipinos' interest to the 500th anniversary of the victory at Mactan, the Philippine part in the first circumnavigation of the world, and other related events in 2021 in this time of COVID-19 pandemic. Unang-una po, maraming salamat po sa lahat ng patuloy na sumusubaybay sa aming programa since last year, kasi last year po nagsimula ito. Gayun din sa mga katuwang na ahensya na kaagapay namin para may sa katuparan ng programang ito. Kagaya po ng National Historical Commission of the Philippines, Presidential Communications Operations Office, Radio-Television Malacañang, Department of Foreign Affairs, and Department of Education. We are live via Facebook pages of National Quincentennial Committee, NHCP, PCOO, RTBM, NCCA, DFA, and DepEd. Please do not forget to share this live stream to your friends and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/NQC2020. Follow at NQC2021 on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Quincentennial Committee, for more educational materials. Follow also our playlist on Spotify, 500 Years Philippines, to access the official soundtrack of the Quincentennial Commemorations. At syempre, kasama ko rin po ngayon ang partner moderator ko na si Ms. Juvelyn Nierves. Jose, good morning!
Hi, Ayesha, maraming salamat. Magandang umaga at maligayang 2021 po sa lahat. Ako po si Juvelyn Nierves, History Researcher ng National Historical Commission of the Philippines at kasapi rin po ng NQC Secretariat. Ilan lamang pong paalala, maaari niyo pong gamitin ng Quincentennial Online Lecture Portal sa panonood ng lecture na ito. Mapapanood niyo rin po sa nasabing portal ang lahat ng lectures ng NQC at ng iba pang partner institutions natin. Maaari rin po kayong makagenerate ng e-certificate doon. Ang kailangan nyo lang gawin ay mag-sign up sa portal.nqc.gov.ph at tumutok sa live stream ng lecture na ito sa nasabing portal. Again, mag-register po tayo sa portal.nqc.gov.ph sa mga gustong makakuha ng certificate. Mahalaga po na doon rin kayo manood sa portal ng lecture live stream na ito. Ang ating pong lecture ngayon ay ika-15 ng Countdown to 500 online lecture. Interesting ang lekturang ibabahagi ngayon ng ating tagapagsalita, lalo na sa mga mananaliksik na madalas gumamit ng mga Spanish archival documents bilang mga primaryang bati sa pagsusulat. Sa pagkakataong ito, tayo'y gagabayan upang mas maunawaan at maging pamilyar tayo sa nuances ng mga 16th to 19th century Spanish documents. At syempre, para malaman ng mga paraan kung paano mas mapapahusay ang pagbabasa at pagsasaling ng mga nilalaman ng dokumentong ito upang magamit ng mas nakararaming Pilipino. Kung sakali po na habang nagtatalakay ang ating speaker ay magkaroon kayo ng mga katanungan, feel free to ask questions through the comment section of this live stream and we will accommodate them at the latter part of the lecture. So now let's introduce our speaker for today. Our resource speaker is an assistant professor of history at the Ateneo de Manila University, where he teaches Philippine history, Rizal studies, and the histories of Spain and Latin America. The National Historical Commission of the Philippines, or NHCP, appointed him to be part of the panel for the first 1521 Easter Mass celebration in the Philippines. He also went to the University of the Philippines at Diliman, where he took his Bachelor of Arts in History. Later, he pursued higher studies at the Universidad de Salamanca as a scholar of the Spanish government, where he took his doctorate in archival management. He has undergone training in Australia and Singapore in the management and setting up of archives and museums. He was also involved in projects dealing with the restoration and cataloging of books and documents in several monasteries in Navarro, Spain, under the auspices of the Fundación Caja Navarra and in the digitalization of books with Fundación Histórica Tavera. His areas of interest are Hispanic and Trans-Pacific studies and Philippine colonial history from the 16th to 19th centuries. Our speaker is very passionate in his desire to educate people in the preservation of culture and history by giving lectures and workshops throughout the country. He was awarded by the San Beda College Alumni Association as the Outstanding Bedan in the field of arts and culture for 2018. He is a member of the Archives and Records Association, UK and Ireland, or ARA, coordinator for the Philippine Academic Consortium for Latin American Studies, the Asociación de Archiveros de Castilla y León, or ACAL, and a lifetime member of the Philippine Historical Association. Let's welcome po Dr. Francis Navarro. Hello po, Dr. Chas Navarro.
Hello, good morning. Thank you very much, Ms. Nierves, for the introduction. And thank you, and also to Ms. Sayseng. You've been very patient with me. Okay, I can, okay, I couldn't control it from here, so thank you very much for your patience while waiting for me to set up, okay, my laptop and get connected to the Wi-Fi. Well, again, I'm here to talk about basically archival research in the Philippines, but more so from the point of view of a student of history and as a student of paleography, okay? And I've always believed that, you know, in terms of historical studies together with research, especially when we deal with documents in the archives or any particular document, not necessarily located in the Philippine National Archives or any archives in the Philippines, but everywhere, okay, we will always deal with certain issues and problems from understanding the document to the end, preserving the information and or preserving the document found in the national, in any particular archive. Now, I'd like to share with you now my screen, and okay, let's see. There we go. Okay, and okay. Okay, I hope there. So I would like to talk about paleography and the document. So what is paleography, and what is the particular document that we have, for example, in front of us whenever we would go to the National Archives, for example, here in the Philippines. Now, let me first tell you a story of how I got into paleography, a very brief one. And it all started with a friendship of mine with Father Jose Alcilia when I was still in college. He's a Jesuit priest, a well-known historian of Philippine history, also involved in the translation of documents, not just in Spanish, but also from Latin. And he told me one day that not only would the knowledge of Spanish be very important in understanding our history and in the study of our documents, but also an understanding and knowledge of paleography. And at that time, I've only heard of paleography. And later on, when I had the opportunity, okay, thank God, to study this while as a student at the University of Salamanca in Spain, okay, I got very much interested into it. That even though I only had 3 subjects on paleography, I decided to enroll on a few more on my own. So what is paleography for those of you who would like to know this? And it simply means, in the strict sense, the study of ancient handwriting. And its basic objects are these. No? First, to read the ancient texts with accuracy. So that is one major role of paleography. Second, to date and localize their handwriting, because if you know the history of handwriting, not just languages, you will see that it passed through a dozen of stages, or more than a dozen of stages, before we basically got what we have right now, no? Basically in our own handwriting. As such, it is a major component of 2 or other more complex disciplines: diplomatic, which studies all the aspects of documents and records. So there are 2. One is paleography and one is diplomatic. Paleography is into the handwriting, while diplomatic studies, not necessarily foreign studies, okay, as we all know or understand it, but in this particular area, it is the study of all the aspects of the document, from the material use to what would be included in all of these documents. Okay. So in a wider sense, it basically studies all aspects of materials, of books, anything written on paper which is produced by the hand. Okay, so that is basically what paleography would be. Okay. Now, in my experience as a researcher and an ongoing student of history, even up to the present, okay, and in my advice to my students in research and to anyone who would like to ask me, okay, going to the archives, of course, entering it is very manageable for us. But once we are in front of the document itself, especially where, like the Philippine National Archives, for example, has more than 13 million documents related alone to the Spanish colonial period. So basically, the most important tool that one would be to have a reading knowledge of Spanish. Now, Spanish is very important, and jokingly, Father Arcilia would always say, you cannot be a historian, he says, if you do not understand Spanish, no, in the context of our condition in the Philippines. So a reading knowledge of Spanish is very important. And I'll be very honest with you, I only took my Spanish seriously when I had to go to Spain, but I thought reading Spanish was simply enough. So, but there are so many nuances of the Spanish language, and of course, being an old language, it also changed during the centuries. Okay, so a reading knowledge of Spanish. Second, we are always faced with unfamiliar abbreviations of Spanish and Latin, okay, in archaic and contemporary terms that abound in the documents. Okay, if you look at the particular document, as I will show you later on, you will see that sometimes you see a document like a letter, but basically you will see other things written on the side, sometimes in symbols, sometimes in abbreviations. And so basically this is a challenge, to a student of paleography or a student of the language itself. So this is one of the many things that we would encounter when we face a document. Then, of course, okay, once we have the document, we always have that important task of translating it. So not just transcribing it, but also translating it. Because in order to translate it, you would have to know the exact word, okay, as written by the scribe, okay, or understand the complexities of the abbreviation that is connected with it. And lastly, which is a common problem in all archives throughout the world, would be the state of our documents, okay? The state of the documents. So preventive, okay? So once these documents are lost, then there will be no other form of getting information anymore, because these are the originals. And in many cases, many of them have not yet been copied or digitalized, okay? And I'm very happy also that our National Archives is basically going through this right now of preserving and digitalizing the documents that they have there. So, so in a way, we deal with paper. Anything that would be written by the hand, okay, by the hand of the scribe, and anything that would be written on paper. Now, let me give you an example. For example, we have this cover page of the first printed book in the Philippines, which is part of our Incunabula, meaning the first books printed in the country. And it is the Doctrina Christiana, printed in 1593 by Fray Juan de Plasencia. Okay. Now, as a basic introduction to paleography, you will see the print, although not written by hand, okay, but printed, okay, from a wood block. You will see, okay, the words written there, which is very clear, okay, Doctrina Christiana and Lengua Española. Okay, you will see that instead of using this simple horizontal line over the Española, the ñ, there are two dots there. So this is what I mean, okay, in that particular period, the ñ on the N at the time, it had not yet been officially what you might call symbolized. So in this particular period, two dots was sufficient, okay, to denote that the N here is the Spanish ñ. So N and ñ, and then I Tagala, okay. So that is it. And you will see that the letters, okay, even the words, okay, are clearly written here. So the document is well preserved. And the printing, the writing on this paper is very clear because you can see everything. Okay. So for a paleographer, this would be easy to work with. Okay, even though you do not understand maybe Spanish, okay, and knowing what the letter would be there, that is written there, it would be very helpful already, okay, in anyone's research. Now the same thing here, continuing pages of the Doctrina Christiana. Okay, again, well printed. The letters are clear. You will see that more or less, whether you have the words and the letters written, okay, on either side of this page, it would be easy already to understand. Okay. So again, an easy task for a paleographer, okay, to see that the letters are well printed. Okay. Now, still with regards to our handwriting in the country, okay, the baybayin. Okay. Well, I'm using this particular table made by Pedro Paterno, okay, wherein he made a comparison of the various handwritings and of course alphabets, okay, which we refer to generally as the baybayin, okay, from the different ethnic groups. Okay. Now, of course, when we look at the history of our handwriting or the history of paleography in the Philippines, we would have to date it from this particular period. Okay, so I always tell my students, when we speak of paleography, it does not necessarily mean just Spanish. No, it is applied to any particular written language that that we can see written or printed on paper. Okay. So paleography applies to any written language, letter or words, okay, that is printed and written on paper. Okay. Now, in this, well, of course, paper is relative because some of in the past when there was no paper, we wrote on what? On barks. We wrote on trees. So still, okay, that is still part of paleography. Now, whenever you see a document, okay, a Spanish document, sometimes we just try to read it immediately, okay, without looking at what are the parts of this document. Okay. Now, well, it is understandable because we want to get the information immediately from the paper, no, from the document. But if you look at it, you will see that the document has different parts. Okay, especially the first page of a set of documents with its introduction and with its seal. Okay, you will see this particular page on the top of any important document. Now, in general, the document has three parts. Okay. First, we have what we call the protocolo. Okay. The protocolo basically introduces what is written in the document. Okay. Who wrote it, the date, okay, the place. Okay. So basically, when you try to look in these documents, you will see that all the major information about who wrote it, where it was written, so on and so forth, would be written in this particular part called the protocolo. And the destinario, or to who it would be addressed to, okay? To which country, to which town, for example, that this document will be given to, okay? So this is where you have all the information written in the first part of that document. Then you have the body or the cuerpo, okay? The cuerpo would be basically all the information now that would be written by the scribe or the person who would be writing this document. So, well, normally this is what we look at already, the body, what is the information here? Okay, so we call it the body or the cuerpo. Then you have the provenance, okay? The provenance, okay, where the document will be emanating from whom, okay, from which office, okay, from which the seal, for example, okay, the seal would say everything about it, okay, even without the name of the person, at least knowing where the seal is, if it's very clear, you will see where it would be coming from which office, okay. And seals were very important even up to now. We still use seals, to officialize a particular document. So this is what we call the escataculo, or provenance with its seal. Okay, so one part actually that you see on top is the invocación, okay, which is also part of the escatafol or provenance, the invocation. Okay, the invocation usually, well, it reminds you maybe of a prayer. It simply says there, normally, this document written for so and so by so the scribe, okay, uh, ah, okay, officially given by the king. So basically, these are the types of invocations that you will have there. Okay, invoking the office, invoking the power of that office side by side with that of the seal. Now, in in our case, in the Philippines, for example, okay, understanding previously already the parts of the document, okay, it does not necessarily have to follow that particular format, but you will see, for example, okay, the what call that, the parts of the document here, the date of its emittance, okay. Uh, it's nice to see this document because it's well written, aside from being well preserved. Okay, it shows you a list of names and surnames. Okay, and their professions and their age. Okay, so again, you won't. Not all of the documents that you will see in our archives in the country would be this good. Okay, some would be already in either in a very good state still, or unfortunately sometimes towards deterioration already. Okay, but again, the Spanish were very systematic. Okay, I would always say that my professor said that in the one thing they could say of the empire of Philip II and onwards, say, more or less, would be a systematic cataloging and archiving of documents. And one student of mine asked before, why is it that when they see a particular document written by, for example, the original document, and then they see the same document written by a different person, okay, with a different handwriting, but exactly the same, so on and so forth. And I simply told them, well, unfortunately, there was no photocopying machine at that time. So whenever the document would pass from one office to the other, for example, from the king down, each office that receives the letter makes a copy of it, and they would seal it with their own seal, and before they transfer it to the other office until it reaches its destination. And this is the case why we have more than 30 million documents, because sometimes you see the same document written 7, 8, even 10 times. Okay, why? Because the administration, although was in terms of administering, was quite heavy, but imagine the amount of paperwork that has to be done, okay, to collate and to make copies of one particular document. Now, in this particular document, you will see practically something different, okay? Again, the handwriting, you will already see that it's good to see it, and we'll talk about the handwritings later on, okay? What were the different particular handwriting styles used by the various scribes through the centuries? Here you see a document showing the provenance, okay? You have the words, letters there, MYS, okay? And then you will see that it is part of a letter, okay? I use this example because this is one particular letter that it attracted me before because of the clarity of the letters, the words written here. One student even asked, why is it that as if it was written on a straight line. Well, that has something to do with the paper. And during that time, I said, some of them, in order to make the letter more formal, they used a ruler. Or sometimes they used what you might, well, they use it actually for making sure that the paper is flat. It's made from the bone of a whale, and it's like a ruler, and it has two functions: flatten the paper, and at the same time to make sure that the sentences are correctly and written straight horizontally. Then you write over it. Okay. But again, from letters to even maps, for example. Okay. Not the, well, one shouldn't say, is, are maps considered part also of the study of paleography? Yes, because, well, whether you just see mountains or lines there, if once you see words written down, okay, the seal there, the provenance, the legend, okay, on the map, definitely paleography enters. Okay, it has to, because it has the words there were written to interpret the map. Well, unfortunately, this map more or less has lost a part of the information in the middle, okay, through time because of the folding. Okay. Now, throughout the country, there are various places where we go for research, and from the Philippine National Archives, which, as I've said, contains a priceless collection of millions of documents in the Spanish section alone, all the way down to the Dominican Archives of the University of Santo Tomas, okay, the Ayala Museum, the Filipiniana Library of the Ateneo de Manila University, and the Archives of the Society of Jesus, the University of the Philippine Archives, and the Lopez Memorial Museum, and the Ortigas Library. Okay. This area, this source, these places, and there are still many places found throughout the country, especially in the religious collections of the various religious orders, the archives. Well, you will see the documents that I've mentioned, okay, where they are preserved and kept for our use, for the use of researchers. And in each of these particular library that we enter, of course, you will encounter the same thing: how to understand the document. And most of the time, when you try to transcribe it, first, before translating it, you will always encounter, how would I say, dead ends. Dead ends. I remember I was consulted by someone from Hong Kong, and he said he has been trying to look at this word and to decipher it for almost 3 hours. And he was doing research on animals in the Philippines, from carabaos to goats. And when he sent it to me, not that it was easy, but sometimes it's not just the word that you have to understand. You have to understand everything to understand the word. And it simply said the word vaca or cow, B-A-C-A, except that he could not understand the letter C, because the letter C was written like an letter F. So the thought that it was an abbreviation or another animal bothered him for almost 3 hours. So it turned out it was vacas and cabras, cows and goats. Okay, so it's the same thing. I admit that sometimes I have to stop when I do not understand a word, and sometimes I have a eureka moment, a thought that maybe this word was like this or written like this. But again, okay, the important thing here is to, how would I say that? Be careful to take care in understanding the word. Okay, read it, reread it, check it all over again before you finally get it. Or sometimes you have to skip it and go back to it in order for you to understand what was written in the entire document. Now, the problem that we have in our documents is not just understanding Spanish, but also understanding the handwriting. Okay, the handwriting. And from the 15th to the 19th centuries, there were various forms of writing that was taught in schools, especially in the university level. Well, we commonly refer to these people, those who write, who have knowledge of writing, we refer to them as scribes, okay? Because those who have attained a university degree, because of the knowledge to read, to teach, to understand, they also have the knowledge of writing. And so many of them would end up as scribes working for the government, for the king, or for any agency of the government. And there were 5 common handwriting styles used from the 15th to the 19th centuries. You have the Italica, okay, the Redonda, Cortesana, the Alemana, and the Procesal. Now, let me show you an example of an Italica. Maybe some of you have seen this already, okay? This particular style. Well, from the word, it originated from the Italian. And of course, we also use it in our laptops, you know, the italic. Okay, so this is basically the origin of the print. Okay, now an understanding of all of these handwritings would depend on how you understand the letters individually. Okay, the italic, which is very similar. Well, of course, Italic is a Romance. Italian is a Romance language, just like Spanish. Okay, so it would be easier for us to understand it and read it because it's very similar. So you simply have to understand the letters. For here, it says El Orden. Okay, the masculine of El Orden, the order, okay? The document, a police order, and you have La Orden, which is feminine, referring to the religious order. So again, this is one of the basic understanding of the language that would come in very handy. But again, you will see that more or less the Italic is easy. Okay, what if you are confronted with this? This is very medieval. Okay, well, it's usually used in churches, but again, comparing this with the previous one, you will see and notice the spacing, which would give you the words exactly as it is written. But how about this one? Too close to each other. Okay, the Redonda was more on the style of the writing, more round. Okay, so if you look at it, you see a lot of like round words. Even the letter A is like the letter O. You just have to put the tail at the end. Okay, here already, as early as the 15th century, you will see the C, the cedille, with its tail also there, which is very common now in the French language. But again, researchers are always puzzled by this because many of them could not decipher the words. Okay, so the arzobispo or obispo. Okay, so the C there is pronounced like an S, but nowadays in Spanish it's spelled with a Z, okay, with a Z. Okay, so arzobispo. Okay, so again, another writing is easy to understand, but you have to look at it from the point of view of which are the words here, okay, which are the abbreviations. So again, that is one particular what you call that, sometimes nail that you have to that you will have to undergo here. Then you have the cortesana, courtesan, which is basically which originated from the French. Okay, usually used in the court. Okay, that's why cortesana. Okay, now again, you will see the difference. With the words more, it's not like the Redonda because it's more like the Italica because the words are separate. But look at the writing style. So you have a lot of hand movements there. Okay. So, like for example, the round one, you have the M there, okay, muy, okay. So again, okay, sometimes understanding, okay. So the Y there goes a long way with a long tail, okay. So the letter M is written in different way, no? So it could be because the M and the Y were put together, and then you have the mess, okay, in the second to the last line, okay, okay, ocho de mes, okay. It says there the you have a different way of writing the letter M, okay, which is similar also uh, to the other words that you will see here, okay, on the other letters. But again, an understanding actually of this handwriting is by constantly studying them. Okay, you get to get used to it. Okay, you get used to them. Okay, that you will remember already that this is so and so. So that is why, as I will show you later on, having a table of various forms of writing the letter would be very useful. Then you have the German, the Alemana. Okay. Again, what makes this different from the others? Okay. Well, you will see that they have pointed letters here. Okay. Well, very Germanic, I would say, but again, very understandable, because the letters are clearer. It's not like the Cortesano where they have to make so many of these so-called decorations and lines that you usually see in the old prayer books. Okay, but later on, actually, in many of the printed materials in the 16th century, especially the church prayer books, you will see a lot of these letters written. Why? Because they're easier to understand. And the Alemana would be in terms bigger, bigger, the letters would be bigger as compared to the previous handwritings that I've mentioned. Processal. Okay, now this is something that would be very common already from the 18th to the 19th, and I would say also even up to the 21st century, because you might think that even our own doctors would write like this. Okay, but again, what is processal? Well, the processal is simply again from the word okay, it's a handwriting that was very common in the 18th and the 19th centuries, taught at schools. This was a time when the writing down information had to be written down faster. Okay. In this particular case, there would be many abbreviations used in this particular process. Okay. And in many of the documents that we sometimes find in our own libraries here, you will see a lot of these documents written like this. Now, one student also asked me, and this is very interesting. Why is there a similarity between the way we write here in the Philippines and the way our cousins across the Pacific in South America would write as well? Well, my answer there would be not necessarily similar, because there was no particular rule in the empire in terms of writing. Later on, okay, in the 19th century, when the Real Academia de la Lengua Española would come out with fixed rules on writing, on abbreviations, on punctuations, will there be a more, how would I say, orderly way of writing in Spanish? Okay, because there will be one particular rule. Okay. So that would only be in the late 18th, 19th century, and even up to the present, because the Spanish language continues to grow, okay, because of the number of speakers. And and readers throughout the entire world, no, not just in the Philippines, but South America, in Spain, and practically everywhere the language would be used. Now, understanding then the previous forms of writing, okay, let's look now into some of the documents here that we have. This one is in 1897. You will see that there were two ways, two forms of writing here. It could have been the same person who prepared the cover page for this particular document. So this is on the cemeteries, okay, Sanidad de Cementerios, okay, in 1897. Okay, and this has something to do with the hospital and the cemetery of the Chinese in Manila, no, in this capital. But again, you will see that there's a mixture here. You have the cortesana because of the length of some of the letters. Good. So a mixture of previous forms of writing, but again, very clear. Because more or less by the 1890, by this particular period, 19th century, there was already a standard rule in writing the letters. Okay? So what is an A? What is supposed to be a B? Okay, there will be variations, but still there will be a common rule already. Well, some of the documents that you will encounter will be like this. Well, I wanted to show you this because I took a picture of this when the person was not there. But one shocking thing here would be the use of a clip on top, no, which is which is not supposed to be there. Okay? They should not have used that, and I made a comment of that later on, okay, because it practically this would damage the paper already. Okay? A permanent damage was there already. Okay? But again, you will encounter documents like this, some with holes on it, that would make it harder for you to understand the word. So that's why it is very important for you to read everything, just to study one particular letter or word that has been lost because of the deterioration of the paper. So the same thing here, okay, the same state. So you will see that, you know, paper, the paper here is through time, okay, it has deteriorated, okay, and in any particular management of the archives, of course, the care of the collection and the paper should always be prioritized, okay, because there are so many reasons why a document is destroyed or deteriorates. Insects, humidity, even men, for example, who constantly use the paper or damage it. Okay, so we are one of the reasons why these documents are appearing like this. Okay, so again, you will encounter documents like this with written in ink, but because of time and age, okay, and because of the poor quality of the paper, you will see that the ink even used here, okay, has an impact on the paper. Okay, so okay, paleographer would have to see that. Okay, that what was the kind of ink used here? Well, why is it that it's going on? You can see it goes to the other side. Well, sometimes it's the ink actually and the pen used, okay, by the scribe. But of course, that's on one side. Okay, but again, although the letters here would be clear, okay, the information here would be clear, you will see that, well, it's the paper now that is the problem. So again, that is one particular what you call that problem also that we will have to face when we look at the documents. Okay, an example like this, an old one. Okay, this one actually dates from the 1600s, and okay, with holes already in many parts, big ones actually. As you will see, the person who wrote this, okay, used used a mixture of the processal, the cortesana, and the italic. Okay, so again, Sometimes it does reflect on the person who writes it, a person coming from a good family, educated family, who gives what you call that importance, not just in reading but also in writing. So all in all, the major rule here for any student of paleography is patience and study. You have to be patient when you deal with these documents. And it's like what I said earlier, constant study of the documents would already make you what you call that a paleographer, in the sense that you will already notice and see, okay, the various handwriting styles and also the various styles in writing the letters for that you will find in the documents. And I always give suggestions, and these are my suggestions. Whenever you look at a document, make sure that you study the handwriting carefully. Okay, don't just jump into it, and that is still a case that I do. I jump into it without understanding, and you get frustrated. Okay, but my teacher would always say you have to be very patient, and you have to look at the entire document first. Okay, look at the portions that are familiar to you. Okay, sometimes you want to start from the top and finish everything like step by step, but sometimes you will have to skip those. Try to look into the spots that are familiar, so that will give you an understanding already more or less of what might be included in the document. Use the surrounding text as guide. The colophons, meaning the words written on the sides. They could be words written to correct, okay, or additional information on the document. Okay, so there are so many information written on one particular document, and you will have to look along the sides if there are other words or writings, maybe not written by the original writer of the document, but someone who has actually taken hold of the document and has decided to write on it. Okay, understanding the variety of handwriting that we talked about, okay, it will be very helpful. Comparing unknown letters on the alphabet charts. Okay, and I will show you an alphabet chart later. There are many sources that are available on paleography. Unfortunately, in the Philippines, it is a field that that still has not taken what you call that enough strength that it would be studied in schools. But it is something that I think we should consider, okay? And especially in the universities like UST, in the Ateneo, where there are very old documents. Okay, the archivists there are well prepared for this, and do not spend so much time on a letter or name. Okay, just like what I told you earlier, a person who spent 3 times on a word and then not being able to complete the entire document because of one particular word that became a hindrance. Okay? That is normal. But again, just like what I said earlier, look at the entire document, look at the parts that are familiar, and try to understand the document before you go into the nitty-gritties of each word. Now, this is a table that I'd like to share with you, and if you want, I can send this to you. Okay, you just have to just ask me, and I will send this to you. Okay, very good to have it beside you. So from the 12th century to the 8th to the 15th, all the way up to the 17th century. Okay, so how the various letters have changed through time. Okay, so from A to Z. Okay, to A to Z. So again, of course, this will vary throughout, because there will be, like here, one student who saw this said that, "Sir, I do not see the enye," but then of course, later on it will be included. So these are the things later on that would have to be added in this particular table. Materials that are very important that you can use, And if you are, I can send you a scanned copy of this, which I happily give to anyone who wants to know, who wants to deal with the archives and at least get a knowledge of the various abbreviations in Spanish. Okay, Bibliographic Guide to Spanish Abbreviations. This one is one of the best ever written. It's two thick volumes, okay, but it's Spanish paleography from the 16th to the 17th century. Okay. And then, I'm sorry, it's not that clear. Okay, the writing to what has been written. Okay, let's just escritura. Okay, from the table, the escritura, from the beginning all the way up to what has been written. Okay, again, another important book on paleography, and a manual on paleography and diplomatic Spanish. Okay, from the 12th to the 17th centuries. Well, in terms of Spanish, the 17th century, the 12th to the 17th century will be the years wherein there will be various forms of writing not yet still in the process of being finalized. So by the 18th century onwards, the Spanish language, in terms of the written language, would already be fixed. Okay, and this is where you will have the more or less, okay, a unified form of writing the various letters, using them into words throughout the Spanish Empire. Now, well, I'd like to end my talk with this. No, this was written by a very important Spanish archivist, Mexican archivist and paleographer, and she gives this, and she left this advice to anyone who would like to go into the study of the document, okay, of any document in the archives. And she says, read with calmness and attention to detail, avoiding anxiety or worry. Read each specific document word by word, avoiding the trap of confiding solely on your memory and knowledge of similar texts and phrases. Take into account all written elements, no matter how minimal they appear. Even the most insignificant mark may have transcendental importance. You see, the slightest change could make a difference. You should investigate what it means and why it was placed there. Long and difficult text should be read here several times until you have a complete transcription. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm sorry it took me quite a while to finish. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Navarro. So before we continue with the open forum, we would like to greet po ang ating mga viewers. So Ayesha, sino-sino ba yung mga masusugid nating viewers sa ating lecture?
Kaya ang una, gustong bumati ni David Kendall, greetings from Riverside, California. O, diba? Ang viewer from California. Si Edward Brotonel din, good morning Manila from Chicago, Illinois. Tapos si Sir Noel Gaton, ang curator ng Costillejos Museum natin, ay bumabati din. Ayan. Franlex Valencia, watching from San Jose del Monte, Bulacan. Si Maria Feli Aurelio, bumabati din. At si Albert Vicente Fontanares Barreto, nanonood mula sa Gumaca. Tais din po namin batiin lahat po ng teachers na nanonood sa DepEd live streaming natin. Jobs?
Okay, thank you po. Again, maraming salamat po sa lahat ng ating viewers. Siyempre sa DepEd po na actually maraming mga commenters dyan ng mga teachers. Hello po, magandang araw po sa lahat. Actually, Dr. Chas, meron lang kaming isang nakalap na question.
Yes.
And ito po, what was the most memorable material po that challenged you during your research?
Well, actually, nakakahiya man. I was in the, my experience was not being able to complete a document that only had 5 sentences. It was in the archive at Simancas in Spain, no, at Valladolid. And just like that I said earlier, no, hindi ko matapos, hindi ko maintindihan. And I had to leave it for another day or two until suddenly I met someone in the library who was doing research on the history of the Guardia Civil in the Philippines. And when he asked me, what do you have there? And then in a matter of seconds, this one is like this, like this, like that. And then suddenly when I looked at it, nakita ko, ganun pala. So you see, there are documents that could easily be understood, and then suddenly it just disappears from your mind, nawawala lang, okay? And suddenly you realize na, yun pala yun, okay? Yun pala. Well, at that time, I had not yet involved myself deeply in paleography kasi I was just doing research. Pero yun. At marami pang documents no, na masasabi ko. Pero yun masasabi ko na 5 sentences na hindi ko magawa in one day. Tapos nagawa ng isang tao in a matter of less than a minute.
So that's interesting po. So, Dr. Chas, ikaw, Ayesha, meron ka bang nakalap dyan na questions? Here, nakamute ka.
Ayan, so far wala ko nakuha questions. Pero, Sir Chas, pwede ba kami makahingi ng kopya? If ever may mga mag-request sa amin, kopya nung alphabet?
Yes. Sure, paradala ko. Actually, yan, nasa
slide.
Nasa slide, please use it. Para sa inyo na yun, please use it. Saka kung if ever may kailangan kayong material na I'll be very happy to share it. Kasi lalo na yung isang ginawa ko dyan, yung kay Roberta, in yung book niya, Understanding Spanish Abbreviations, okay, in South America. I have that scanned, and I've given it to some people in over there as well. But if you want to have a copy, let me know, send me an email.
Can we send them to the public po, sir, if ever may mag-request?
Pwede rin, oo. Wala naman siguro problema dun.
Ayun po, salamat po. May mga humabol pa pong questions from the comment section of our Facebook Live. So, first po from Ms. Monteza Arlene Seville. So, what material is still incomplete and you are highly interested in finding it?
That's a good question, no? Pero never thought about it kasi each material kasi sa akin is always a challenge. Every document is very important. Every material that is placed in front of me. Siguro, ang dream ko lang is maybe to get hold of a document maybe that is hidden somewhere, okay, and it might change the history of our country, But of course, I have no particular document in mind, because what I do know is that there are still a lot of materials that we have to look into, okay, not just here, but also overseas, okay, and slowly but surely, these materials are also coming home or coming out, for our use.
Okay po. Another question po from David Kendall. Can you say something about the differences in spelling and use of letters such as X or J, I or Y, H and G? I find this often in parish church archives.
Yes, that's a very good question. Kasi that was also the same question that was asked to me 2 years ago by the parish archivist at Lipa. So when I gave a talk to them about preserving documents, these are the nuances of the Spanish language. Okay, for example, yung I and Y. Okay, so they're depending on the consonants and the vowels. Okay, so that's the difference. For example, I and Y. Well, I think I would leave that to a Spanish teacher, to explain that further. Pero these are accepted. What is the I and the Y? But they have the same meaning. Or for example, the letter H and the letter J. In many documents in the Philippines, many of them written by locals, okay, Filipinos, sometimes you will see that instead of the J, they will have the H. Okay, so kasi it's the same sound. the silent H, and then the silent, how we say the J, hota, no? So they mistake it for the sound, okay, which is common, not just in the Philippines, but also even in the old documents in Spain, depending on the scribe. Because not all scribes were well educated, remember. Some of them knew how to write, but they were not totally educated in writing, okay? So that is one thing we will have to take into consideration as well. So for you to be able to understand this differences, is that you will have to in a way constantly remember that this particular letter actually stands for this letter. That's why the importance of the table. Okay. So even up to now, no, paleographers, we always have to consult. We have to make sure that what is being said there is exactly what it's trying to say. Okay, so we have to understand the letters. That's why it's always advised to us, take your time, try to look at it. Sometimes, in my experience, hindi ako makatulog din. Suddenly, boom, I realized, a eureka moment, yung pala yun. Okay? So, you see, it's actually exciting, adventurous, okay, but it could also be taking too much of your time.
Okay po, thank you po Sir Chas. Meron pa pong question galing kay Ayesha.
From Ms. Charlene Manese, question, could you suggest a good school, university that offers a paleography course here or abroad? Yung course na fit po sa mga documents natin dito sa Pinas.
Yes. Well, I do not exactly know whether it's already being offered, but my experience only with paleography was when Father Arcilia was giving it as a private class, understanding, but never officially as a class. But in many schools abroad, in some of them in the School of Library Sciences in the United States, in Europe, these courses are offered. Okay, the paleography, for example, being a specific field in archival management. Okay, because there is a difference between what is a library and what is an archive. In the archive, the archivists preserve and they try to process the knowledge there by understanding the documents and giving the information to the researchers. Okay, in my case, for example, the Universidad de Salamanca in Spain. Okay. And then in other old universities in Spain, like Carlos III in Madrid. In the United States, there are many universities with the School of Information that offers already courses in paleography. Okay, so it is something that I wouldn't say becoming very popular, but becoming an important area of study.
Thank you po Sir Chas. Siguro we can accommodate na mga 2 questions na lang po.
Okay.
So, okay po. Follow-up question po from Ms. Montesa Arlene Seville. Is there more documents needed to confirm the details missing during the Magellan-Elcano expedition?
So I think more or less the National Historical Commission of the Philippines already came out with a report on that. We've already looked into the documents, okay, and until maybe later on, okay, if suddenly there's a book or document hidden somewhere 20 feet under the ground that would change everything, then that would be something historical, But again, we work as in the times that we have right now. Okay, so maybe that's the best way I could answer that.
Okay po, last question for today from Hugo Kiel. Do classified archives exist? If there is, what do you think it is about?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Do classified archives exist? If there is, what do you think it is about?
Classified? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Classified po archives.
Classified archives. And is he referring to secret archives? Because in Europe, there are many secret archives. They call it secret archives, okay? Not because it's secret, and mostly they use this word for church records. I first came about it at Salamanca when the archivist invited me. Do you want to go and see the secret archives? It was in a room hidden in the cathedral, but it was a room filled with documents. Very, how would I say, a treasure trove of documents written by important people, signed documents, papal bulls, so on and so forth. Well, I do not know why they call it secret, because there was a time, well, of course, it was, the keeper of the information also has to know how to keep a secret. Okay? So this is one of the things that the archivists will be doing. But for now, I do not see any. I say if there is an archive or collection that is like that, unless it's very private.
Parang
Okay
may last
po.
question pa.
Sige, yes.
Sir Hugo Kiel, was there an archive that you encountered that says otherwise about our history?
Well, in my experience, no, none yet. Okay. I think the basic materials that we have now on our history, used constantly by our historians as well. Okay. It's only a matter of interpreting it. Okay. And of course, history is a constant study also of the past and of the present. So we are constantly looking into materials. Okay. And I'm amazed basically at the number of materials or books that always come out in history, because there's always information and a new interpretation about it. Okay, which is why scholarship is very important. Okay, so this is what you might call a result of good scholarship.
So again, thank you po Dr. Chas. Sa tingin ko, yun na po yung huling tanong natin para sa lekturang ito. And to summarize po today's lecture, nakita natin na may paraan po para matuto tayo sa pagbabasa ng mga archival documents, specifically Spanish archive documents. At ang tawag dito ay paleography. So, pagdating sa mga Spanish documents, mahalaga po na sa isang researcher na may kaalaman siya sa wika, and dapat matutunan niya ding maging pamilyar sa nuances ng mga scripts, kasi tulad nga na nabanggit ni Dr. Chas, may mga salita na existing lang during the 16th century or unique lang for that context or time context. Bukod doon, malaki din po yun na itulong na binigay po ni Dr. Chas tungkol sa mga different parts ng isang Spanish document, kasi sa paraan na ito, alam natin kung sino ba yung nagsulat ng isang particular na dokumento na ito. At bukod doon, maganda rin na ang isang researcher din ay maging pamilyar rin sa iba't ibang handwriting style. Kasi ngayon ko po nalaman na meron palang 5 handwriting style, katulad ng Italica, Redonda, Cortesana, Alemana, and Procesal. At natutuwa din po ako kasi marami ding binigay na guide si Dr. Chas kung paano mas mapapabuti yung pag-aaral natin ng mga archival documents. At ang mahalaga para sa isang researcher, maging masigasig, maging pasensyoso, syempre, palaging mag-aaral kasi ang pag-aaral po ng mga sinaunang dokumento katulad ng mga Spanish documents ay interesting pero napaka matrabaho. Kasi may na-realize ko din na kaya pala minsan paulit-ulit yung mga nababasa natin, yung pala sinusulat po ulit ng isang particular institution kapag nakarating sa kanila yung isang letter bago nila iparating sa susunod pa ng mga institution. So yun po, muli maraming salamat po Dr. Chas sa pagbabahagi ng inyong kaalaman at expertise sa lekturang ito. At bago po tayo magtapos,
thank you very much.
Yan, may mga announcements lang po tayo. Again, DB pong madadownload sa NQC website na nqc.gov.ph ang 2 batches ng Quincentennial paper dolls featuring our ancestors tulad nila Lapu-lapu, Raha Humabon, and other historical figures like Ferdinand Magellan and Antonio Figapeta. Featured din si Miss Universe, Catriona Gray at ang ating mga sinuunang bangka. Inaanyayahan din naming lahat ng mga musikero at musical enthusiasts sa Himig Bagani Song Cover. Ang Bagani po ang team song po ng 2021 Quincentennial Commemorations. At wag po nating kalimutan na ibahagi at i-like ang Facebook page po ng National Quincentennial Committee, facebook.com/NQC2021. Follow din po kami at NQC21 on Twitter, Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Quincentennial Committee, for more educational materials. Follow also our playlist on Spotify, 500 Years Philippines, to access the official soundtrack of the Quincentennial Commemorations. Lastly, upang maging updated po tayo sa mga naka-line up na programa para sa Quincentennial Commemorations the Philippines ngayong taon, antabayanan lamang ang NQC Facebook page. Kita-kit sa mga susunod pang countdown to 500 online lecture series. Mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Mabuhay kayong lahat. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye everyone.
Mandirigmang Pilipino.